Welcome back, life science learners, to the next segment of our lesson today.
We've been focusing on biomes, and we've unpacked what different types of biomes are. In our segment now, we're going to be focusing on the terrestrial biomes of South Africa. As I mentioned, it's important that we recognize that the terrestrial biomes refer to the biomes that are found on land. Remember that South Africa is a country that is surrounded by water along our east and west coast. So those form the aquatic biomes. Let's now look at the biomes in South Africa, the terrestrial. As we study the terrestrial biomes, it's important that we have reference to the map of South Africa. And often learners struggle to remember where these biomes are, because they remember the biomes but don't have context of the maps of South Africa and the different provinces. So as we get into this lesson, we're going to be focusing on the biomes, their locations in the context of which provinces these are. And I think it's important for you to recognize that. As we tackle each biome, we would look at typical vegetation, the typical animals that are found, as well as the climate in those areas. So let's get straight into unpacking what the different terrestrial biomes are. Let's look at the map of South Africa and let's look at how it's divided into the seven different biomes. It's important that we first look at the key. And the key often is a color-coded area that gives you the locations of each of these biomes. In this map, all we need to look at is the geographical locations of these. So when we look at the forest biomes, you can see sprinklings of this along the east coast of South Africa. So this would be probably around Port Elizabeth, East London. If we go further up, we can see a little along the eastern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. We've got some of areas that are still rich as regarded as forest. The next area is the fynbos, and this is also known as the Cape fynbos. Here, if you look along the ends of the Eastern Cape, the Western Cape here, towards the southern parts of the Cape, you can see these dense areas of fynbos. And remember that the fynbos is areas that are typically having those plants that have extremely thin leaves that have adapted to conditions there. The next area we're looking at is grasslands, and that forms a significant portion of central parts of Gauteng, and you've got your Free State around here. Okay. Then you look at the nama-karoo. These would be predominantly dry, arid areas of the Western Cape and the Central Cape here. Okay. And then predominant area of South Africa is the savannahs, and savannahs are these areas that are dark, and if you look at it, probably make up the largest areas of biomes in South Africa. And then we've got a very important biome called the Succulent, which serves as a significant area that attracts lots of tourists based on types of plants that are present. Your Succulent crew as well as your Cape fynbos. And then if we look at the last biome that we're going to would be the Thickets, and these are sprinkled along parts of you can see KZN coming towards the eastern Cape, and these are typically found as small scatterings around these areas. And that's often along the coastal regions influenced by the type of climate that's present in these areas. So guys, that's just a quick overview of these biomes. As we move on, it's important that we recognize these biomes and learn where these biomes are. It's important that biomes are understood in the context of where they are. So as I mentioned, we've got the forest, the fynbos, the grasslands, the nama-karoo, the savannah biomes, the succulent crew, and your thicket. Let's look at the context of these in terms of where we are in different provinces. As we get into it, we looked at Pretoria, and we know that that's kind of the central capital. We've got Bloemfontein here. We've looked at the Namibia and those areas that form the nama-karoo. This is where your succulent biomes where, and here you looked at the Cape fynbos, and we said that larger portions of these areas made up your savannahs. And then we saw sprinklings of thickets in these areas. So let's look at both of these in comparison. I think it's important that you're able to compare both and look at the geographical locations of these. So this is just purely for
a way in which you can identify the locations of these biomes in the context of where they are in the provinces. And often learners learn the biomes, don't understand where these are in the context of province. So try and use these images to try and understand where these biomes are in the context of the different provinces. Right. So as we look at each biome, it's important that we understand the location, the climate, the characteristic type of vegetation that defines that area, as well as the type of animals found. So these are the characteristics of each biome. So when we look at the savannah biome, guys, if you look at it, is on my map. So all these areas that are in the dark red are the savannah biomes. And these are predominant along the Mpumalanga as well as the Limpopo provinces. They are defined by hot, rainy summers. They have extremely cold, cooler winters. The soil is infertile and porous, and water drains very quickly through them. The vegetation in these areas are characterized by baobab trees, acacia trees, and your marula. We also find typically the mopane worms found in these trees. If we talk of the characteristics of South Africa being identified by the Big Five, this is where you would find them. So your Big Five, in terms of that's typically associated with South Africa, would be found in your savannah biome. We also see it being home to the wildebeest, the eland, hippos, kudus, cheetahs, giraffes, wild dogs, and your hornbills. Right, so as you would see a beautiful image showing your baobab trees that are typically found in your savannas. You've got the Big Five here, essentially where they would be found. You've got giraffes, you've got your amarula trees there, and you've got your acacia trees. So these form what we refer to as your tourist hotspots, where tourists actually are attracted towards these because of the big game, and that we talk about the Big Five, as well as the presence of these unique animals found in these areas. So when we talk about the Kruger National Park and the Pilanesberg National Park, these are areas that are typically found in your savannah biomes. Right, so the next biome is the grassland biome. If we go back to our chart, the grassland biome is typically seen in areas that are colored in yellow. So most of these are in the central plateaus of South Africa, inland areas of KwaZulu-Natal, as well as the mountain areas along the Eastern Cape Province. So you'll see them along the Eastern Cape Province around that area. The climate that's experienced in these biomes are hot summers, with cold winters, often seen with frost. They have a high summer rainfall, with thunderstorms and hail. The soil has a rich upper layer, which is fertile. Very conducive for farming, especially of maize, as well as for cattle feeding. It's also known as the soot crust, sweet grass, and that is the vegetation that is typically enjoyed by antelopes, your antelope, your blessbok, your springbok, as well as your wildebeest. So some of these images you can see here. You kind of got your wildebeest. You've got these plantations of maize that are grown extensively because of the rich soil. And you've got the grass that the elands feed on, which is also kind of the sweet grass that's typically found in areas that attract these animals. The next biome is the nama-karoo, and the nama-karoo in this map is used scale of using color brown. The nama-karoo covers most of the central plateau regions of the Western and the Northern Cape provinces. So if you look at it, the Western and the Northern Cape provinces are in those areas there. It's a semi-desert, flat and rugged terrain. The ground is dry and rocky. There's no permanent flowing rivers in there. These often dry up. The rainfall is less than 500 millimeters a year, often experiencing drought. Summers have extremely high temperatures, and winters can be extremely cold. The soil is sandy with very little nutrition, and often is ideal for. So here you've got plants that are typically adapted to these extremely dry conditions. You have a stone plant which is typically seen in that. And you've got the sweet thorn and you've got the karoo daisy. In these areas, because of the nature of the temperature, you find that the animals are much smaller. So you've got a variety of rodents, jackal, you've got fox, jackal, you've got many reptiles, you've got many reptiles, and you've got some endemic scatters of larks.
So here you can see the
so
typical terrain, dry, rocky.
You've got dry, rocky.
Plants that are typically adapted to dry conditions.
Plants that are typically adapted to dry conditions.
That we're talking about.
These are the karoo daisies that we're talking about.
And a unique
You've got your jackals,
plant called
and
the
a
rock
unique
plants. And these are
plant called the
that,
rock
if you look
plants.
at them,
And these are plants that,
shriveled leaves, extremely small.
Shriveled
leaves, stems that have really become
They've got stems that have really become thickened to absorb water and be able to withstand the dry, harsh conditions.
To be able
the flowers
to
are
be very
adapted
small,
to be able to be very small to attract insects for
usually
pollination.
not noticed in
usually
the rocky
not
terrain,
noticed
but
in the rocky terrain, but these are plants that blossom and produce these beautiful flowers that often emerge from what seems to be rocks.
The next biome we're looking at is the succulent.
The next biome we're
so
looking at is the succulent karoo. So if we unpack the word succulent, it often refers to plants that have
leaves.
Thick,
and so this
fleshy
is an area that is found
and so this
along
is an area that is found along
the western coast of South Africa. So in
areas
the map,
that are
shaded
the
out.
blue
So this
areas
is the
that
west
are shaded out
of the Western
so this
Escarpment
is the west
through the
of
western
the
belt
Western
of the Western
Escarpment
Cape. So
through
as
the
I
Western
indicated
belt
here,
of the Western
along
Cape.
this
So as I
area
indicated here,
and
along
inlets
this area
towards the little karoo.
and
So
inlets
find
towards
it's
the little karoo
down there.
You'll find it's towards the little karoo
They have
down there.
winter rainfall.
They're
very
winter
hot
rainfall.
and dry summers.
They're very
Soil
hot and dry
is
summers.
sandy with very
Soil
little
is
nutritional
sandy
value.
with very little
It
nutritional
often
value.
has plants that are
It
succulent
often
plants, that
has
are plants
plants
that
that
have
are
thick, fleshy
succulent
leaves.
plants that are plants that have thick,
It's
fleshy leaves.
often seen as defined by the
often seen as
nama-karoo daisies,
defined by the
and you have your
nama-karoo
annual
daisies,
plants. This
and
is
you
often
have your
a
annual plants.
tourist hotspot
This is
in
often
terms of
a tourist
people going
hotspot
to
in
view
terms
these
of
nama-karoo daisies
people
when
going
they
to view
blossom
these
during
nama-karoo
summer and the
daisies
spring.
when they blossom during summer and the spring.
It's characterized by the dusty,
Okay.
the
It's
namakwa,
characterized by the
June
dusty,
mole rats,
the
as well
namakwa,
as a
June
barking
mole
gecko.
rats, as well as a barking
And here
gecko.
you can see these geckos that
Okay,
actually
and
produce
here you can see these
a
geckos
sound
that
that
actually
resembles that of a dog.
a sound
They
that
tend to
resembles that
call
of a
out
dog.
and chirp a bit.
They tend to
Okay?
call
And
out
these
and
are the
chirp a
amazing,
bit.
beautiful
Okay?
flowers
And
that
these are the
spring up
amazing,
during
beautiful
the spring.
spring up
Okay,
during the
so if you've had the
Okay,
opportunity
so
to visit these
if
areas,
you've had the
beautiful during
opportunity to
spring,
visit these areas,
lush
beautiful
lush
during
areas
spring,
covered with beautiful flowers
areas
for as far as your
beautiful
eyes
flowers
can see. So
for
again,
as far as your eyes can
important
see.
biome
So again,
from a
important
tourist perspective.
biome from a tourist perspective.
The next is the fynbos, and what is
The
unique
next
about the
is
fynbos
the
is often,
fynbos, and what is
remind the
unique about
learners
the
that
fynbos is often
it's regarded
remind
as
the
an
learners that
ecological
it's
hotspot.
regarded
What
as
do we
an
mean by that?
ecological
It's
hotspot.
an area that is
And what do we mean by that?
host and home
It's an area that is
to many endemic
host
species
and
that are
home
found
to
exclusively
many
in
endemic
South Africa.
species that are found
And these
exclusively
are
in
often
South
threatened
Africa.
by human
And
activity.
these are
So
often
the
threatened
fynbos
by
again
human
is
activity.
a recognized as a hotspot which has some of the most endemic plants found
which
in
has
South
some of the
Africa.
most endemic plants
And
found in
these
South
are
Africa.
often need to
And
be
these are
cared for and
often
conserved because
need
of
to be
human threat
cared for
in
and
that
conserved
environment.
because of human threat
So
in
if
that
we look at the
environment.
fynbos, the fynbos
So
is
if we look at
this
the fynbos,
area
the
that's
fynbos
indicated here
is this
along the
area that's
western and
indicated
towards the
here
southern
along the
parts of
western
Cape.
and towards the southern
So it's the southern
parts
and the
of
southern,
Cape.
southwestern
So
parts
it's the
of
southern
the
and the
Cape
southern,
province.
southwestern parts of
The
Cape
climate that is
province.
experienced here is that the winters are
The climate
cold,
that is experienced here is that
summers
the
are
winters
hot
are
and dry,
cold,
the
summers
soil is
are hot and dry,
infertile, and it's
the
leached
soil is
all
infertile,
of all its
and it's
nutrients.
leached
This
all of all its
will limit the
nutrients.
growth of large
This
plants, and hence you
will
find
limit the
that
growth of large
plants that are
plants, and
found in
hence you
these
find
areas
that
are often
the plants that are
have
found in these
extremely-
areas are
that
often
very
plants that have
reduced in
extremely
their ability
that
to
are
grow
very
high or
reduced
tall,
in their
they've
ability to
reduced
grow high
leaves,
or
and
tall,
typically found
they've
in these
reduced
areas
leaves,
because of the type
and
of
typically
soil
found in
that
these
has
areas because
actually
of the
been
type of
leached out
soil
of all
that has
its
actually
nutrients.
been leached out of all its
68% of the plants
Okay.
found in these areas
68%
are
of the plants
and as I
found in
mentioned,
these
the word
areas are
endemic
endemic.
refers to plants
And
that
as
are
I
found
mentioned, the word
only
endemic
in that
refers to
part
plants
of
that are
the
found
area, nowhere else
only
in
in
the
that
world. So
part of
a
the
rich,
area, nowhere else in the world.
biodiverse
So
spot.
a rich,
It's
biodiverse
one of the 6 floral
spot.
kingdoms in the world.
It's one of the 6 floral
where
kingdoms in the
proteas,
world,
shrubs,
where
the rooibos
proteas,
plants,
shrubs,
olives,
the
table
rooibos
vines,
plants,
and your
olives,
attaching reeds
table
are
vines,
found.
and your
It's also
attaching reeds
characterized
are
by
found.
the klipspringer,
It's also
Cape Mountain
characterized by the
zebras,
klipspringer,
the geometric
Cape Mountain
tortoise,
zebras,
and baboons.
the geometric
And so I've
tortoise
got images
and
of them.
baboons.
So these are your
And so I've got images of them. So
beautiful
these
view
are
of
your
the Table Mountain,
a
and at the
beautiful
foot of
view
that
of
you can see
Table Mountain,
your
and at the foot of
fynbos
that you
plants
can
all
see
in
your
these areas
your
here.
fynbos plants
Okay.
all in
Also,
these areas
the
here.
geometric tortoise
Okay.
typically found
Also,
in these
the
areas,
geometric
endemic
tortoise
to the
typically
Cape
found in
fynbos.
these areas, endemic
Okay.
to the Cape fynbos.
As we wrap this section up, we're looking at the
As we
forest
wrap this
biomes.
section
Again,
up, we're
the forest
looking at
biomes
the forest
are
biomes.
indicated
Again, the forest
in these
biomes
areas here
are
in
indicated
green
in these areas here,
little bits of
green,
them around
and so
your
that's
Cape
little bits
coast
of them around
line along
your
the southern
Cape
coast,
coast
as well as
line along the southern
Naisna
coast, as
and
well as
Titicaca.
along Naisna And
they have rainfall throughout the year, mainly winter.
They have rainfall throughout the year, mainly winter.
The forests are cool and moist.
The forests are cool
often very
and
humid,
moist.
And the soil is
often
deep
very humid,
and very fertile.
And the soil is deep
so
and
we
very
have
fertile.
Plants that are found at the Otinigua
So we have
yellowwood trees.
plants that are found at the Otinigua yellowwood trees.
Ferns and your vines.
Epiphytes,
so again,
ferns
forests are
and your
typically
vines.
areas that
So
are
again,
much cooler.
forests
and,
are typically
and
areas that are much
humidity.
cooler.
So these
and
plants
have
are adapted
lots of
to being able
humidity.
to
So these
live
plants
in
are
the cool,
adapted to being able to live in the cool, shady
Animals that
areas
are found in
of
these
these
are the
forests.
blue duikers.
Animals that are
your
found
bush
in
pigs,
these are the blue duikers,
your Neisner,
your
lories,
bush pigs,
your woodpeckers,
your Neisner,
as well
lories,
as your paradise eyecatchers.
As well as your
so
paradise
these are the typical
eyecatchers.
ones that we're looking at. So you can
Okay,
see
so these
these
are the
ferns
typical
that
ones
grow
that
in
we're
the
looking
much
at. So you can
and
see
the cooler
these
parts
ferns
of the
that grow
forest,
in the much
and
in
there's
the
your
cooler
dassies
parts of
and
the
your
forest.
warthogs.
And there's your dassies and your
And finally, as we
warthogs.
wrap this section up, the thicket biome.
And finally, as we
again,
wrap this
these
section
are
of the thicket
patches
biome,
that are found
again,
along the
these
eastern
are
coasts of
patches that are
South
found
Africa.
along the
along the east coast of
South
KwaZulu-Natal and the
Africa.
Eastern
Along the
Cape.
east coast of
Here the
KwaZulu-Natal
rainfall
and
is
the
fairly
Eastern
high.
Cape.
There
Here the rainfall is
areas that
fairly
are covered
high.
with sandy
There are
dunes.
areas
and
that
they
are
have
covered with
soil
sandy
that's
dunes,
often very
and they
clay.
have soil
different
that's
types
often
of
very
plants. They're
clay.
often shrubs,
There are different
evergreen
types of
forests,
plants. They're often
succulents that are
shrubs,
found.
evergreen forests,
Typically
succulents
found
that are
along
found.
these areas are monkeys,
Typically
squirrels,
found along these areas are
elephants,
monkeys,
as well as your black
squirrels,
rhinos.
elephants,
And so as
as
we
well
look
as
at
your
these,
black rhinos.
these are your
So
succulent
as we look
plants,
at
and
these,
often
these are
you
your
find lots of
succulent
aloes,
plants, and
you
often
find your
you
euphorbia
find lots of
species,
aloes,
which are
you find your
thickets and
euphorbia
aloes that are
species,
growing in
which
these
are
areas,
thickets and
and they often
aloes
home
that are
to
growing in these
monkeys
areas,
that have enjoyed
and they often
the type
home
of
to
vegetation
monkeys
and the
that have
flowers
enjoyed
and the fruits
the type
in
of
these
vegetation
areas.
and the flowers and
So
the
guys,
fruits in these
we've
areas.
looked at the 7 terrestrial
So guys,
biomes, and
we've
remember that
looked at the
it's
7
important that we
terrestrial
recognize
biomes,
their
and
location,
remember that it's
the
important that we
typical
recognize their
climate that's
location,
experienced, and
the
that's
typical
defined by the
climate that's
rainfall,
experienced,
the
and
temperatures
that's
during
defined by
summer,
the rainfall,
winter,
the
and other
temperatures
unique
during
features
summer,
of the soil.
winter, and other
We then
unique
spend some
features
time
of
looking
the
at the
soil.
characteristic animals
We
of
then
each
spend
one.
some time looking at
And
the
then we
characteristic
looked at the
animals
types
of
of
each
plants
one.
that are found.
And
And
then
essentially
we
that
looked at the
defines
types
what a
of plants
biome
that are
is.
found.
An
And
area that is
essentially that defines
characterized by
what a
its
biome
climate,
is. An area that is
but
characterized
the
by its climate,
vegetation and the types of animals that inhabit
but the
that area.
vegetation and the types
You've
of
been
animals
great.
that
Let's have a
inhabit that
short
area.
break and I'll see you at
You've
the end
been
of it.
great.